Barakat. I welcome to all of you in the second episode of the webinar for the month of June. This episode is about the disruption of education during pandemic. Dear audience, I hope you will respect the protocols of the webinar. Please use the chat box for your questions and the comments. This webinar is being presented and recording through live stream that you can find through the sources of social media of University of Education. Dear audience, I'm delighted to introduce you with the Honorable Nishad Riaz, who is working as a Director of Education, British Council, Pakistan. Nishad is managing British Council's education work in Pakistan, and her association with British Council spans over 1.5 decades. Nishad has played a crucial role in forging strong institutional partnership between the UK and Pakistan, spreading into areas of schools, skills, higher education, scholarship, ranging from traditional educational models to innovative programs. Nishad is the recipient of President of Pakistan Award of Excellence for Best Academic Performance. She is the first female engineer from Gilgit-Baltistan, inspiring the other females to pursue their aims. Nishad has declared the premier Chevening Scholar from Pakistan in the year 2003. Her passion and work for education has taken her around the globe, speaking, writing, sharing, and advocating the case of access to and success of education. Nishad is also great editor of academic journal and has authored several papers. So let's begin your session. Very warm welcome, Ms. Nishad, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sadia. It's an honor, it's a privilege to be here. Happy Wednesday to everybody, wherever you are. Good morning, subah bakhair, sham bakhair, dopaher bakhair, wherever you are, depending on the time zones you are living in. I wish you a very great day. I think it's going to be a talk. It's going to be a talk जिसको मैं कहती हूँ दिल की बात. As Dr. Sadia said, I'm very passionate about education. Education has brought changes in my life. It has turned my life around, like it does for everybody else. जितनी एजुकेशन की ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव पावर है या इसमें जो जादू है मुझे नहीं लगता किसी और चीज में है. So you will see me getting passionate about some times, and this passion अंदर से आती है, ये spark अंदर से आती है. So great to have you, and I'm looking forward to discuss with you and learn from you. There's a slide deck. Dr. Sadia ने मुझे advise किया था. If I come up with a slide deck, it will be helpful. But I think our discussion will go beyond the slide deck as well. So just to start with, I'll try to present my presentation. अभी मुझे Dr. Sadia ने सिखा दिया है कि how do we present it. So let me try to present the presentation here. And I am a slow learner. तो कभी-कभी ऐसे हो सकता है कि I get slow, and bear with me. At times this happens. So, Dr. Sadia, just give me a shout if you see the presentation so that we can go ahead.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. I think our discussion is going to be around, the education and learning. I won't use the word versus because education is a form, is a way of formal learning. Learning तो शुरू से अज़ल से है और अब तक रहेगी और रहनी चाहिए because that's how we breathe, that's how we live. Learning is our life, and throughout our experiential learning, whether we go to a school, whether we don't go to a school, whether we go to a college or we don't go to a college or any institution, we learn. So we'll see and we'll discuss what I think about, the evolution of education is such. You must be aware of this photo. Some of you might have gone to the place. These are the mountains and villages where I come from, and इसकी reason ये नहीं है कि मैंने सिर्फ इस वजह से डाली है. I think of education as this suspension bridge. I think of education learners as one of us walking on the bridge. I think that nothing exists in vacuum. आप में से कोई vacuum में नहीं है, मैं vacuum में नहीं हूँ, हमारा कोई sector vacuum में नहीं है. So education doesn't exist in vacuum. Education sector, schools, colleges, universities, the process of learning and the learners, we are part of a bigger ecosystem. और ये इकोसिस्टम, इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा चेंजेस आती हैं, कभी तूफान आता है, कभी calmness आती है, and we go through all these changes. Some of these are in our control and some of these are not in our control. For example, if there's an economic change in the world, it affects the education system. Poor families can't send their children to schools. If there's a social reform, it affects the education system. If there is a revolution, it affects the education system. If there's innovation, it affects the education system. So whatever happens outside the education system, where in the ecosystem education is affected. At the same time, I believe that education has the power to affect the external world. The economy, society, community, everybody else. So education न खुद इससे influence होता है बाहर से, बल्कि education has the power to influence the individual, collective lives as well as the economies and the societies. So maybe it's good for us to take a stock of where we are and why we are where we are. हम क्यों उस जगह पे हैं जहाँ आज हैं? And what's next? What should be next? Where should we go? I think it's the world of ABCD. We all live in the world of ABCD. Artificial intelligence is taking steer. It's ruling the world. B is the blockchain. You're aware of it. C is the cloud. Everything is stored in cloud. We remember, hard disks. We remembered CDs. We remembered 23-inch wali floppy disks and others. How data is stored. So the cloud, the world of cloud, where it's stored. And D is for data. Everything is about data. Data has more importance than oil. Data has more importance than any currency, and it's going to be more important. It is a dangerously connected world. Seriously connected with all those things of which we have control and some of which we don't have any control. It is connected. But at the same time, you and I live in a world where we see lots of fragmentation. While we see this connection and connectivity, we also see there's a lot of disconnection and there's lots of divide. On the slide, you see some of the pictures taken from a satellite. All the data interactions that are taking place in 1 second at a time. So you see, it's very connected. Everybody is connected through the mediums of data and waves and all the connections that we have. But at the same time, we see that there is a divide. Millions of children are dying of hunger. Millions of people do not have the access to digital devices that we are privileged to. Divides of society, divides of economy, divides of class, divides of learning, and this affects the education. Because our children, our learners, our educators, our teachers, we are part of the society. While we are part of this connected world, we also represent this dangerously fragmented and separated world as well. So it's a world of conflicts, it's a world of contrasts, जहाँ पे education breathe कर रहा है और evolve कर रहा है. While we say it's a world of divide, we know that how many children are out of school. Children, millions of children, 263 million children were out of school in 2018. We are in Pakistan. We have around 22 million children out of school in Pakistan. 22 million बच्चा स्कूल से बाहर है. 22 million बहुत सारे मुल्कों की आबादी भी नहीं है. It's almost around the size of the countries. Australia की आबादी जितना बच्चा हमारा out of school है. तो आप ये देखें कि what does it mean for us? Is it a crisis for the education sector only? Is it a learning crisis? It's a teaching crisis? And those who are within the school system, we know how the education works. What is the quality of the education? उनमें से कितने हैं जो बहुत अच्छा पढ़ सकते हैं? Well, the world said 1/4 of the world cannot read a part or all part of a simple sentence. This was 2019. आप ये सोचें अगर एक दुनिया की चौथाई बच्चा जो स्कूल के अंदर है, अभी हम उनकी बात ही नहीं कर रहे, जो नहीं है, millions of children, वो अगर एक जुमला नहीं पढ़ सकते, तो what is the state of our learning? As I said, evolution. I think let's go back to where the learning started from. From one side of the picture, you will say Plato's Academy. around the 3rd century के अंदर Plato's Academy was established, where the form of learning was discussed, discourse around learning. What is learning? Then you also see Darul Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, Abbasids के rule के अंदर, I think it was 8th century, where actually learning was discussed, where geography, philosophy, astronomy, medicine was discussed, and the library was formed. Let's come back to South Asia, University of Nalanda, जो कि अभी इंडिया के अंदर है, one of the oldest universities in the world. यहाँ पे 2000 years ago higher education started. Now we see our kids, yourselves, ourselves, and people like me, and our parents and our grandparents using gadgets. The evolution, where we have taken the evolution of learning from, how the learning has changed its phases and its forms. But is it effective? If it's efficient, is it effective? क्या इतनी मौसर है learning जितने पहले होनी चाहिए थी या होनी चाहिए? I leave that question to you to think about. And we talked about South Asia. Where I am sitting in Islamabad, around 70 kilometers or so, there's a place Taxila, which is very famous for the Indus civilization, जहाँ से civilization start हुई, and it's also less famous, it should be, for the University of Taxila. Taxila 10th century BC में बनी, and this used to be the home of learning. Students, scholars, teachers from around 7 countries used to come here to discuss theology, to discuss music, to discuss science, to discuss literature, to discuss archaeology, to discuss the evolution of human being. We are where we are. If you are in Pakistan, if you are sitting in the South Asia, we have a khamir of learning in us, in our land, in our civilization, in our culture. The word mentor, जो बहुत आजकल हम यूज करते हैं mentoring के लिए, उस्ताद और शागिर्द, guru और शिष्य, these are the words that originated from this khamir. So we are learners from the beginning. Then what happens? What happens in this evolution? That where we are, the state of education, where it is. I think it's not our fault, it's not your fault. It's how education was evolved in the 18th and 19th century based on the industry model. It's based on a factory model where products are stored, then there is a batch. I did engineering, as Dr. Sadia said. I was the batch of 94. Mere class fellows of almost same age. We sit in a class. In front of us, there's a board. There's a form of learning with an instructor, educator, and a learner. Then this batch goes to the other. Let's go back to the school again. So school mein there are classes which are separated. Urdu ki class, English ki class, social studies ki class, physics class ends, and then chemistry class begins. Learning has no boundaries. Learning के लिए बेल नहीं बजती कि अभी आपने साइंस की क्लास बंद करनी है और आपने फिलॉसफी की क्लास ऑन करनी है. This thing which I have in me, it's so powerful. As we were talking कि ये ज़मान और मकान की कैद से आज़ाद है. Space and time. Learning doesn't need space and time for a class to begin and class to end. The lectures around physics actually do not end when chemistry class starts. Physics is within chemistry. Physics and chemistry live within our kitchen. When our mother cooks, when we cook, when we eat, science happens among us. When we grow, science happens in us. When we feel cold, science happens in us. When we think about the creation of the universe, philosophy happens within us. When we feel emotional, science happens us. When we feel sad, something happens us, which is literature, which is philosophy, which is science. So I think we divided our learning when we tried to formalize education into boxes. उस बॉक्स को कभी हमने स्कूल कहा, उस बॉक्स को कभी हमने कॉलेज कहा, उस बॉक्स को we called it a university, name it. We boxed it within a premises. So there's a wall, there's a class, then there are walls within the classes, class 9th, class 10th, class 11th. There's a gradual progression. Experiential learning, the power of learning from nature, उस चीज को हमने we tried to box in, which is not bad, but that's how it worked. And then at the same time, what we tried, we went high tech. We said, all right, let's get rid of the blackboard. Let's get rid of the takhti. Let's get rid of slate that we used to write. Just to tell you, I am of the takhti generation. I used to write with a takhti and a qalam. And I loved, sharpening that qalam or uski nook banana. And then we came to blackboards and whiteboards and smartboards and then these gadgets, smartphones, all the gadgets and the world of cloud is such. So we kept on evolving. But is it, while we change our gadgets and the forms of education, is it our learning also improving at the same pace? I leave that question to you. Then EdTech and MOOCs, massive open online courses. आपको पता है, gadgets, platforms, Khan Academies, Coursera, FutureLearn, you name it, you know it better than me. The flood of knowledge that's pouring into these smart gadgets, to our laptops, to our devices that we have. And then universities started traveling to us. A university is in your laptop. A university is in your smartphone. A university is in your gadget that you have. The content of knowledge that is flooding from all around. So there is something with the design of the education that you, I, everybody is aware of. I love philosophy. I love music. I love science. I can't say I'm a science person or I'm an arts person because I think this all happens within us. Arts is science. Leonardo da Vinci, who is not aware of Leonardo da Vinci? People see him as a painter, as an artist. I see him as a scientist. The golden rule, the golden formula that happens within us, हमारे हाथ के अंदर, हमारे दिल के अंदर, हमारे structure के अंदर. Just Google the golden ratio, and you will see this golden ratio exists everywhere. So are we taught that this golden ratio, which is taught in science, pi, happens in arts? Most of the films, most of the music, violin, tunes, they are based on this golden ratio. So we separate science from arts. We separate music from science. We separate philosophy from the very basics of literature, which actually tells us history, which tells us, what is important, why is it important, why it is important to evolve, the questions around why. So we have boxed science, physics, chemistry, biology, zoology, literature into boxes. Need to open up. Everything is connected in nature. So our education shouldn't teach us the laws of nature, but also the art of nature. This beautiful nature around us, which has so much power, which has science and arts, everything around it. So while we were craving and we were running around, we were in competition around going out of the box. It seems to me that somehow we boxed the learning in silos, छोटे-छोटे डब्बों में, छोटी-छोटी boundaries में, circles में, हर किस्म की हमने इसके अंदर boundaries बना दी हैं. Then Dr. Sadia mentioned pandemic, and who else? I mean, can you take this pandemic out of your life? That was February and March in 2020. Something happened which we were not aware of, which we were not ready, which you were not ready, our learner was not ready, our educator was not ready, our health worker was not ready. It happened. As a result of what happened, around 1 billion students and around 6.3 million teachers were out of their places of learning. Schools, colleges, universities, everything went down. Everyone went home to the places which was out of our control. I think the biggest stress test for the education and for others was pandemic. Didn't it change the status quo? Didn't it change the pace that we were going on? It changed everything. You saw many schools and universities changing their admission tests. Harvard University ने अपने graduates को पहले graduate किया, medical graduates को, so that they could be part and they could join the medical force and health workers. Forms of learning changed. From WhatsApp to Zoom to Google Meet to Microsoft Teams to I don't know what. Both learner and educator were learning at the same time and also reactively responding to the need. Education, I think, was at its best in 2020. When it had this shock, the education sector showed we can respond, and it changed the norms. All those processes which were very near and dear to our processes. No, this admission test can't change. No, these are the SOPs. No, these are the policies. A student must come to the class for attendance. ये सब हमने खुद change किया. It showed that education was vulnerable. It showed that education had to be flexible. The brightest thing, which I'm very proud of, that first, education was exposed to this shock and how education sector responded. And I'm really proud of what Pakistan did. With, as Dr. Sadia said, despite being short of resources, we started tele school, we started Talim online, we started on cables, we started on radio, we started teaching. We started reaching out in all the forms that were possible. Our teacher was learning how to use internet. At the same time, when the student was responding and waiting for the teacher to be learned. So our teacher became a learner, a fast learner than any learner anywhere in the world. And salutes, I pause here, to pay tribute and to pay my regards and salutes to all the teachers, including yourselves, who were at the forefront of this change, embracing this change, not denying it, accepting that this has happened, and also coming forward. और इसमें आगे बढ़ के आपने स्टूडेंट के साथ जिस तरह से इंटरेक्ट किया, whether the student was in the university. And to pay my regards and salutes to. And what happened? Forms of learning changed. This is a slide from 2020, a year ago. We all saw the change. Yeah, whether the student was in the university. And to pay my regards and salutes. Learning traits and behaviors, their interests changed. So in India and Pakistan, people opted for financial analysis, business fundamentals, and communication skills. While in the US, for example, people started learning music. I learned music. I learned piano using, online resources. So the forms of learning, which we thought were very different, I learned drawing. I'm using the digital drawing. Similarly, my children, my family, your family as well. So the forms of learning were not only changing, but also they were expanding. Earlier, where we were thinking this is the only thing to learn, I think we expanded our horizons about learning. That learning is much broader than what we thought already. We are coming out of those boxes slowly and gradually. And not only us in Pakistan, you can see that the entire world is now going towards blended forms of learning, hybrid forms of learning and teaching. Teachers as well as students are gearing up themselves. Universities, colleges, schools. You see most of the 50% on this slide are actually coming towards, from entirely being offline to being online in some form, digital forms of learning, virtual forms of learning, remote forms of learning, distance forms of learning. And then that's where the world is going. Learning is changing. Learning is evolving. And you see forms and shapes are changing. There are increasing platforms of knowledge. I don't want to name them, but that a few of them are mentioned here. And you are aware how many edtech companies are coming, how many edtech societies are emerging. Even young children are developing these apps and forms. There's an explosion of data and information. Flood gates. आपको पता है डैम के लिए जब वो खुलते हैं and then you just flood होता है पानी का. This is the flood of information. Pouring of information. While it's wonderful, I also fear that there's an information overload. Being an engineer, I feel noise. कभी-कभी signal को purify करने के लिए we need to filter the noise. वो गैर ज़रूरी interference, वो शोर उठा दें. Keep away the noise and keep the actual content, actual message, pure message alive. So what is the pure message that our learners should get? What is that pure, real, actual information that our learner in education should get? What is noise? उस noise को कैसे उठाएं? Is noise good? Is noise bad? How much of noise is acceptable? How much is it's not? I leave that to you for some thinking. Just to give you how much of penetration of internet, the cloud, data, blockchain, ABCD we talked about. 1 minute 60 seconds, which is we just we say 1 minute के अंदर आता हूँ, 1 minute के अंदर ये काम हो जाता है, which we think is a very small period of time. 1 minute के अंदर 42 million WhatsApp messages हो रहे थे in 2 years ago. I'm sure pandemic के बाद और ज़्यादा हो गए होंगे. How many groups you are part of on WhatsApp? How many Google searches you do, how many text messages you receive, how many emails you receive, how many networks you are part of. Our world, as I said, it's greatly getting connected. But always remember that this connection, this digital connection, doesn't mean that humans are connected, our feelings are connected, our emotions are connected. It doesn't necessarily mean that we really feel through emotions, through our feelings, through our kindness, through our empathy. These are good numbers. Yes, we are connected and should use these channels. And for learning, wonderful. But there's a human aspect also, how to bridge the actual human being with these. How many friends you have whom you really call friends? And again, for learning. I have been a part of these cassettes. I have used very old calculators and VHS cassettes also. I am part of it. And this is my younger son who is using the digital learning in British Council Library in Lahore. Forms of learning have changed. The way I used to read, my children don't read the same way. The way my grandparents used to learn, I don't learn the same way. However, the fundamentals of learning from nature, ठंड लगती है तो अपने आप को कैसे गर्म करते हैं, रोना आता है तो चीखते कैसे हैं, मेरे reflexes कैसे काम करते हैं when I fall down, all these fundamentals remain the same. However, modes and gadgets and shapes and helpful facilities keep on changing. So there's this difference between a fundamental and a derivative. Fundamental is how I learn from the nature. How, in the beginning of the human evolution, how people used to learn, the basics of learning, how we are inquisitive, how a child is inquisitive when he's born, and how we mold them into the processes. So there is a fundamental way of learning where our emotions, our senses, our feelings, our all potential is involved. Then there are derivatives, that this is the best application to use, that this is the best way of assessing, that these gradings, these universities are the best because QS ranking said that. You are on top because Cambridge rated you 5 stars. You are on top because Federal Board said that you have 80%. These are the derivatives. उन derivatives को अपने fundamentals में कैसे map करें, that actually our learning becomes the real learning. We have to challenge our assessment forms. We have to challenge our learning ways. We have to keep on thinking about how we go to basics and actually learn that how Plato's Academy used to teach, how we used to learn in Darul Hikmah, how we used to learn and discover that the world was round and it was revolving around the sun in the times when these gadgets were not evolving, because our human inquisitiveness was alive then. How we keep that human inquisitiveness alive in these days also. British Council, I'm which proudly part of, is working around all these areas of creating, making sure that our children do not lose the sense of creativity. How we are connected through our Connecting Classrooms program. How we make sure that with our physical and mental disabilities, we still are part of the learning. So we have programs for people with special abilities, whom we call people with disabilities. How we connect. How we make sure that our younger generation, who is very inquisitive about science, but at the same time, they also talk about the conversations of our time, which are really very important to discuss, which are really very important to challenge, which are really very important to connect us. How we connect in this time of disconnect, in this time of digital divide. How we connect, breaking the barriers of societies, classes, economies. How we connect and make sure that we connect on the human level and we learn from each other. British Council have several programs. You are more than happy to Google or ask me or any member of the British Council, wherever you are, in whatever part of the country you are, we'll make sure that we reach out to you. I have also mentioned some of the fellowship programs for Pakistan for higher education. We have launched first internationally recognized fellowship program through Advanced HE in the UK and Higher Education Commission in Pakistan. Here's a link if you are interested to be part of the fellowship. We also manage scholarships of different types. Scholarships in the UK, scholarships in Pakistan to study in Pakistani universities and schools, and we have limited funding around it. We also support science STEM. We also work with networks to make sure that the issues around access, inclusion, equity, and diversity are also addressed. because everybody has the right, every human being has the right to access to quality education. So there are links. I won't go into the detail, but I leave that up to you. And at the end, some questions. As we say in Constitution of Pakistan also, access to education is a human right. And our constitution also says primary education har ek ka right hai aur usko milna chahiye as a Pakistani. So if education is the creation and acquisition of knowledge, what knowledge is? हम किसको knowledge कहते हैं? Who is it for and why everybody should get it? And how we make sure that everybody, girl, boy, of every age they are in, whether they are adult learners, how we reach them, how we make sure that they have access to the quality of education that they have the right to. And they have the information, they have the resources to have the access to the knowledge. How we cross-pollinate this knowledge. You know, cross-pollination, knowledge is about cross-pollination. कभी-कभी हम possessive हो जाते हैं, this is my knowledge, this is our knowledge. Copyrights, we do not need to share. Knowledge has to grow. Knowledge travels, knowledge flourishes when it travels from one part of the world to another. And knowledge, that's how knowledge has to, the journey of knowledge has to reach everybody. It's like that wonderful wind that reaches everybody. It's like that wonderful air and breeze and aroma and smell that everybody has to. So how we make sure that while we go, with the innovation, artificial intelligence बनाए, but also how we inculcate the ability of interpretation. मैं अपने बच्चों को कैसे ये सिखाऊं कि while it's really very important to be, digital, आप programming सीखो at the same time of उनके अंदर ये कैसे cultivate करूं to challenge the questions about how and why, how, where we are, why where we are, where we need to be, why where we need to be. How we make the balance between the world of being physical and digital, the world of phygital. How we make sure that our learning reaches to everybody, including the teacher, including the educator, and the learner, and the parent, and the society. This is a big challenge for the education system. And you being a learner, you being a teacher, you being the custodian of the information and the knowledge and the generator and the researcher have a big role to play. I have a big role to play as a parent. We all have a big role to play as policymakers. We have a big role to play as community. We have a big role to play to share our voices. Even if I have nothing to say, I have to ask, why is knowledge not reaching me? What is it that is stopping me from? I have to share my voice in any way, in whatever possible way. And that is learning. The discourse of learning has to come from everybody who is a stakeholder. कहते हैं ना हम लोग stakeholder, सिर्फ टीचर की, सिर्फ सियासतदान की, सिर्फ मिनिस्टर की, सिर्फ एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर की, वाइस चांसलर की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है. It's our collective responsibility. Because as we saw in the first slide में हमने कहा, education doesn't exist in vacuum. We don't exist in vacuum. We are part of a bigger ecosystem and we influence the ecosystem. Let us influence the ecosystem with kindness. Let us influence the ecosystem with whatever knowledge we have, whatever empathy we have, whatever kindness we have. Let's bridge the gap between justice and education by being the connectors, like Dr. Sadia is doing in her wonderful way. Thank you very much. Let's bring the burning mag. Over to you, Dr. Sadia.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nishad, for giving us a wonderful presentation. Just adding into your knowledge, recently, Higher Education Commission, they have introduced a policy on online and distance learning. Since there are some challenges to implement this policy, but they have done a wonderful job. So, yeah, we are...
Just to let you know, we are part of this Open and Distance Learning Bridge Council. Under the Pakistani Education Gateway, has technically supported Higher Education Commission. And I am sure that this ODL policy will not be one-time policy. It'll keep on evolving. जैसे जैसे दुनिया बदलती है, it'll keep on evolving, and it's up to you how you implement it, how you deliver it. So I wish you all the very best in implementing it in the best sense.
Yeah, that's a good initiative for the Pakistani universities. Well, dear audience, it's a time for the question answer session. If you have any question, please you can write in the chat box or you can directly talk with the speaker. So let's see in the chat box. Okay, it's Babar Khan. He has just commented about the learning and the promoting active, effective learning, education system. Yes, it's a good platform, Babar, and we are doing some wonders in terms of introducing the online learning system. If you have any question, you can directly ask to Ms. Nishad, dear speaker. Dear audience, if you have any question, please. Otherwise, I have a couple of questions to Ms. Nishad. Ms. Nishad, considering the online learning situation, do you think there is a need to educate the teachers in terms of computer literacy in a true sense? And is there any plan to educate teachers for using the online learning strategies on the platform of British Council?
First, who can deny, Dr. Sadi, on the first part of the question? Can we deny? Can we shy away from saying that we need to educate our teacher more, to build their capacity more?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an emergency now to make sure that we build the capacity of our educator, to make sure that they are being able to connect with the learner. These days, learner is way ahead of the teacher. मेरे बच्चे मुझसे बहुत ज़्यादा high-tech में आ गए. I learn from them. Whenever I have issues, I ask them. And so is everybody. So is the learner is ahead of the educator. It's very, I would say it's a very interesting time, exciting time for the educator, that these are the learning times for educators more than the learners. And yes, everybody, not only the government, the state, private sector, but everyone has to put in efforts in teacher training. If you ask what British Council does in one word, I would say teacher training. We invest and we put our efforts in teacher training. Primary and secondary education, we are training over hundreds of thousands of teachers across Pakistan in leadership skills, not only leadership skills, but also core skills. These are the skills that teachers should have in days of today. So what are the skills they should have? Not only digital ones, but also when they are facing students face to face in a classroom, how a teacher should be able to connect with the learner. I won't use the word teach because this learning takes place both ways. But yes, there are programs where our team is more than happy to provide the details. And if you are interested, you can go to our website or reach me out. But there are huge programs taking place in training of primary and secondary school teachers, as well as in higher education. And I'm very pleased to share that we also work with the TVET institutions in skills colleges, जो architectural colleges है वहाँ पे भी. We have huge programs of teacher training that take place.
Okay. Do you think that the bursaries, scholarships, funding, training programs, they have affected as a result of pandemic? And what are the future plans to entertain scholars to secure the academic opportunities on the platform of British Council?
All right. First, I think, as you said, do you think a scholarship program can change? Yes. I won't quote any study, but you being a teacher and all you being students, you know, if a child who otherwise can't go to a school or a college goes to a school or a college or a university because of any funding that is available to him or her, that changes the life of not only the individual, their families, but the overall society around. I am one of those. Education changes the life of individuals. So scholarship programs are very powerful in bringing that change. However, given the scale, as we were talking about, around 22 million children are out of school in Pakistan. Our program, Take a Child to School, works around taking children to school, and we support not only them, but also through Mohalla committees, their parents to take them to school, and around over 400,000 children who were not in school are in schools because of the program. We also have scholarship programs. One of them is Pakistan Scottish Scholarship Program, which helps children to go to schools in Pakistan by funding their studies. Similarly, Pakistan's Scottish Scholarship Scheme for universities is for those students, especially girls in remote areas, very rural and underserved areas, unprivileged areas, less privileged areas, where they think that they can't afford their studies to go to a university. British Council supports it. So I have given you the link, you can. But let me just iterate again. Look out for scholarships. Look out for programs as they support you. At the same time, I think we have to come up as a nation because scale is so big. The scale is so big कि छोटी छोटी scholarship programs small dent तो कर सकती हैं, लेकिन in fifth most populous world in the country, millions of children are out of school, और जो हमारा access to higher education है only 8% है. इसको बढ़ाने के लिए हम सबको मिलके programs करने होंगे. Programs like British Council, program like Higher Education Commission, programs like government की जितनी bursaries हैं, एहसास program is doing great. तो हम सबको मिलके करना होगा, on our individually also. How to support a child in our neighborhood who would need your small help in getting to school, in buying books or a uniform. So let's join together.
Well, I have one question related to keep a balance between personal and professional life. How are you doing this? I mean, being a successful lady and running the most important organization in terms of education that's a continuous process like the British Council. So how you are keeping a balance between your personal and the professional life?
That's a very big question, Dr. Sadia, and thank you for saying those words, but I don't think I truly deserve them. You have rated me high. I'm a very ordinary woman, because the ordinary woman is very powerful. I believe that no offense to boys, you are equally powerful. But I think the way खुदा ने हमें जिस तरह से बनाया है, at the XX chromosome, we are stable. We can do what we can't even think of. That's the limitation of thinking. In 24 घंटे का जो दिन होता है, वो बहुत बड़ा दिन होता है. उसमें if we want, I'm a housewife, very proudly I call my housewife. I'm a working professional. I proudly call myself as a working woman. I am a proud mother, a daughter-in-law, a sister, brother, my family relations, colleagues. I think we have the power to connect. We have the power if we want. I think it needs is your commitment to do it. And whatever I do it happily. I mean, job कर रही हूँ, मेरी अपनी choice है ना, किसी ने ज़बरदस्ती मुझ पे नहीं की है. So I own up to my choices. I have made a choice to work. I was expecting when I was studying. I was a student. I had twin boys. Similarly, throughout, whenever I grew up, when I was doing my PhD, I had my third son. So I think that's keeping that personal life or professional life ko saath saath chalana. It's one human being who is a professional as well as a person. That I make sure कि जब मेरे office के hours खत्म होते हैं 9 to 5, I don't do office. I leave work at work. And I don't do work at home. But whenever I am work, I am fully committed to my work. तो वो मेरे ख्याल में चीज़ है. But I think the flavors of life, एक चीज़ जो हमेशा मुझसे जब student पूछते थे when I was a student as well as working as well as a mother, so I used to say, जिंदगी का चार्म इस चीज़ में है that we carry everything in parallel. ये छोड़ के ये कर लूँगी. Let me leave my family for a while, or let me leave this for a while, let me leave studies for a while. हो सकता है सबका अलग अलग फॉर्मूला है. मेरे लिए ऐसे काम नहीं होता. I want to carry everything in parallel. And as I said, I do it happily. These are my choices. I own up to my choices. I have no regrets, no one to blame. Failures are mine, successes are mine. And that's how I learn.
You're so lucky. Well, there are some challenges. हर एक को face करना पड़ते हैं.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How do you overcome those challenges when they come in your professional life? Being a successful lady, and especially in the context of Pakistan, this is very challenging. So how do you?
Dr. Sadia, every human being, हमारे साथ challenges and opportunities, मुश्किलें आती हैं. I coming from a mountain, I always think of, our life is a journey जिसमें कभी गहराई आती है, कभी ऊंचाई आती है, कभी मड़ी रास्ता आता है, कभी wind, कभी तूफान, कभी दिन, कभी रात. This is part of life. So I don't think these are challenges. I don't take them as challenges. मुझे ऐसे लगता है कि these are the learning points where we learn. 1000 दफा तो मैं शायद नाकाम हुई होंगी, एक दफा कामयाब हुई होंगी. But I think I don't regret. I learn from it. And बहुत dark periods भी आते हैं इंसान की जिंदगी में. Those dark periods show the value of the bright side. एक जब आपको अचानक से रोशनी नजर आती है, तो I think that darkness helps me to appreciate what I get, the value of everything. Even pandemic, 2020 के अंदर बहुत ज्यादा ऐसी चीजों को मैं grateful हुई और मेरा gratitude और value किया जो मैं पहले नहीं करती थी. I used to travel a lot. I mean, दुनिया में हर जगह जाना, lots of traveling, lots of. this was the time when I spent wonderful time with my family. I started cross stitch. I started, doing cooking again. I started reading books again. So I think even in darker periods, और सिर्फ pandemic नहीं, हर इंसान की जिंदगी में darker periods आते हैं, emotionally, personally, हमारी अपनी personal lives में, professional lives में. Not everybody likes you. I mean, all these things happen. It's a different world of different flavors. तो कभी खट्टा खाते हैं, कभी मीठा. But I think that positivity and optimism keeps us alive.
Yes, you're right. Dear audience, last moment, if you have any question. Okay. On behalf of University of Education, thank you, Ms. Nishad, for accepting my invitation and conducting a wonderful session on disruption of learning and to overcome the learning crisis. Thank you.
Excuse me, madam.
Okay. Do you have?
मैंने हैंड रेज किया हुआ था काफी देर का, शायद आपने देखा नहीं. मेरा क्वेश्चन है आपसे. जी, आप सुन पा रहे हैं मुझे?
डॉक्टर मोहम्मद सईद.
थैंक यू वेरी मच मैडम. अच्छा, मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि जैसे आपने माशाल्लाह बहुत अच्छा ये सेशन चलाया. रिक्वेस्ट ये थी कि हमारे मुल्क में अक्सरियत जो बच्चों की हमारी है वो रिमोट एरियाज में है. और अभी इसी सेशन के दौरान हमने जो पिछला ये हमारा पेंडेमिक का एरिया चला, तो हमने देखा कि यूनिवर्सिटी लेवल के जो बच्चे हैं उनको अपने एग्जाम देने के लिए जब ऑनलाइन हो रहे थे तो उनको लाहौर या किसी बड़े शहर में शिफ्ट होना पड़ा उन दिनों के लिए जिन दिनों उनके ऑनलाइन पेपर्स हो रहे थे. तो ऐसी सिचुएशन में जब हमारे पास लाहौर जैसे या बड़े शहरों में तो 4G और इस तरह की सर्विसेज हैं, जबकि दूर दराज एरिया में 2G भी अभी सर्विसेज तो प्रॉपर नहीं है और बच्चों की हमारी अक्सरियत जो है इन दूर दराज के एरियाज में है. तो ऐसी सिचुएशन के लिए आप लोग क्या सजेस्ट करेंगे?
डॉक्टर साहब, ये आपने कोई थैंक यू फॉर रेजिंग दिस बिकॉज दिस इज व्हाट वी आर. आई मीन दिस इज द रियलिटी, राइट? मुरीदके का बच्चा, जामशोरो का बच्चा, टंडो आदम खान का बच्चा, चित्राल में बैठा हुआ बच्चा, बलोचिस्तान में खुजदार में बैठा हुआ बच्चा. मतलब I think of everybody as our बच्चas, right? And all of us are in very different phases, stages और different हालात के अंदर हैं. और इस पेंडेमिक ने सबको एक साथ ऐसे शॉक दे दिया है कि इसमें वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोवाइड करना मेरे ख्याल में स्टेट के लिए भी और प्राइवेट सेक्टर के लिए भी, पेरेंट्स के लिए भी एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है. बट एट द सेम टाइम व्हाट आई सी एज एन अपॉर्चुनिटी. आई रियली फील कि हमारे बहुत सारे बच्चे की लर्निंग और स्कूलिंग रुकी हुई है. बट एट द सेम टाइम बीइंग एन ऑप्टिमिस्टिक, बहुत बुरे हालात में भी मैं अपने आप को ऑप्टिमिस्टिक रखने की कोशिश करती हूँ. आई थिंक दिस इज एन अपॉर्चुनिटी, क्योंकि अब गवर्नमेंट को भी, अब डोनर को भी, अब प्राइवेट सेक्टर को भी, अब स्कूल को भी, अब फादर को भी, पेरेंट को भी, दादा को भी, हर एक को ये पता चला है कि वी नीड टू हैव दिस डिजिटल कनेक्टिविटी. इट विल टेक टाइम. शायद हमारा जो चित्राल के अंदर बैठा हुआ बच्चा है उसको वो कनेक्टिविटी 1 साल बाद मिले या कुछ अरसे के बाद मिले जो लाहौर या इस्लामाबाद के बच्चे को मिलेगी, बट मिलेगी जरूर. इसलिए कि now everybody is focusing on that, and for that I request our students, आपके जितने इंटर्नशिप प्रोग्राम्स होते हैं डॉक्टर साहब, आप टीचर्स होते हुए engage them. मैं अपनी बहुत लिमिटेड और हम्बल कैपेसिटी के अंदर जब मैं हुंजा और आगे गुजाल गई, वहां पे इतना थर्स्ट है, आपको पता है एजुकेशन का. there are children networks who are working to raise funds to make sure कि बाकियों को कोई ना कोई गैजेट मिले, और अगर गैजेट नहीं मिलता तो they provide books, कि आप फिजिकली दे के कोई ऐसी कम्युनिटी बनाए जो बुक्स उन्हें दे दें. जरूरी नहीं है सिर्फ गैजेट देना. लर्निंग इज अबाउट लर्न आप कहीं से भी कर लें. बहुत पुराने रीडर्स डाइजेस्ट के इश्यूज थे, वो आप दे दें. तो आई थिंक इट्स अस, लेट्स स्टार्ट विद यू, लेट्स स्टार्ट विद आवरसेल्व्स, एंड आई एम श्योर दिस विल कम. आप अपने स्टूडेंट्स को एंगेज करें. स्टूडेंट्स हैव वंडरफुल पावर टू डू दैट. नो इजी सॉल्यूशन. वी आर फेसिंग लैक ऑफ रिसोर्सेज. Let's do it together. I am sure there will be a time when everybody will have the access to all these learning opportunities. Thank you for raising this. I'm grateful that you raised this.
And Dr. Saeed, आपको पता है कि we are recording these sessions and we are putting it into Google Classroom, and where the students have access for 24 hours. जब मर्जी चाहें अपना जो टीचर का लेक्चर है वो सुन सकते हैं. एंड जब एग्जाम का टाइम आता है तो यूनिवर्सिटी उनको यूनिवर्सिटी कैंपस यानी ऑन कैंपस एग्जाम की भी ऑप्शन देती है. सो वी आर डूइंग सच टाइप ऑफ द एक्टिविटीज.
नहीं मैडम, मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था, मैं भी इसी सिस्टम का हिस्सा रहा हूँ, लेकिन वो बच्चों के लिए जैसे कि आप कह रही है ना यूनिवर्सिटी लेवल के, माशाल्लाह वो बच्चे बड़े भी हैं, ग्रोन अप भी हैं, उनके पास सिस्टम्स भी हैं, लेकिन जो हमारे छोटे बच्चे हैं अप टू मैट्रिक लेवल, दूर दराज एरिया में, वहाँ ये सिस्टम नहीं है। तो मेरा ये था कि मैडम का बहुत बड़ा वास्ट एक्सपीरियंस है, आप भी माशाल्लाह एक बहुत बड़े टीचर ट्रेनिंग के इंस्टीट्यूशन में बैठे हो, हमें कोई ना कोई ऐसी पैरेलल चीज डिवाइस करनी चाहिए। फॉर एग्जाम्पल जैसे हमारे पुराने ऑडियो कैसेट्स होते थे, या इस तरह का कोई सीडी बना के, या उसकी यूएसबी ड्राइव में टीचर्स को, क्योंकि डेस्कटॉप लोगों के घर पड़े हैं, आल तो नेट नहीं है, नेट की फैसिलिटी नहीं है, अगर है भी तो वो काम नहीं करती। मैं चूंकि खुद दूर दराज एरिया से ताल्लुक रखता हूँ, तो अपने इलाके में कभी जाते हैं तो बावजूद इसके कि हमारे पास डाटा पैकेज अच्छा होता है, लेकिन फिर भी नहीं चल रहा होता। तो ऐसी सूरत हाल में कोई पैरेलल तजवीज करें। तो मैडम ने माशाल्लाह काफी उस पर अच्छे सहरा बात कर दी। जो आप कह रही हैं कि वो बात ठीक है, वो गूगल क्लासरूम चलेगा तभी जब वो कोई नेट की फैसिलिटी होगी।
Absolutely, Dr. Sab, just to let you know, radio stations have come forward. Power 99 के साथ हम बहुत अच्छा प्रोग्राम कर रहे हैं रेडियो का। And surprisingly, वो खैर YouTube के ऊपर भी अवेलेबल होता है, but these radio programs are also broadcasted to the children who are living in remote areas. And Dr. Sab, आपको पता है कि पूरी दुनिया में है, I mean अमेरिका के अंदर, UK के अंदर, यूरोप के अंदर बच्चा has lost his learning. अभी तो यूनेस्को ने जो स्टडीज जारी की हैं उसमें बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स का लॉस हुआ है बिकॉज ऑफ लर्निंग। सो आई थिंक दिस विल बी एन अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर द वर्ल्ड, हमारी आंखें खोलने के लिए, जहन खोलने के लिए, that this is not one person's job. Let's come together. Let's devise a place जहाँ पे रेडियो चलता है, जहाँ सिर्फ सीडीज दी जा सकती हैं, जहाँ रिकॉर्डिंग चल सकती है, लेकिन जहाँ टीचर खुद जाके करा सकता है। I think we have to come up with those blended forms of learning, and these are the children who are going to create are the architects of our future. So you are right that we have to put in efforts in primary and secondary education.
Thank you, ma'am. So nice of you, Doctor.
Okay, so we are running short of time. I think I should conclude Ms. Nishad's session. Once again, on behalf of University of Education, thank you so much for accepting my invitation and conducting a wonderful session on disruption of education and the ways to overcome learning crisis. Thank you for suggesting the valuable information and online learning channels to bring about change in the current situation of education system. And I'm looking forward to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep learning and keep the optimism alive. Thank you, Dr. Sadia. Thank you, Dr.
Allah Hafiz.